A lot of people have been debating the hybrid mana change, with most voices being against it, with only a few for it. Personally, I'm in the for crowd, and I'm going to spend the rest of this video explaining to you why I think it would be a good thing. However, I can sum up my entire argument in a single sentence. If I can cast a card for its full mana cost using only basic lands, then I should be able to put that card in any deck that uses only those basic lands. For those that need a more in-depth explanation, the rest of this video has you covered. Our example commander for today is Kykar. Those little symbols in the top right hand corner tell us that he is a Jeskai commander. This means the basic lands we have access to are islands, mountains and plains. Before we go any further, yes, I am aware that there are more than just basic lands available. There are lands that can be used to produce any colour of mana, including black and green, that can, right now, go in Kykar decks. Those lands existing does not detract from the argument I am putting forth to you. Off-colour mana is an entirely different thing, which we will cover later. Alright? Okay, good. So, Kykar. He costs 4 mana and requires 3 colours. This means there are exactly 3 ways we can cast it. The only difference is what colour of mana we're doubling up on. Now that we've established the lands we're working with and why, let's move on to our hybrid card of the video. I chose it pretty arbitrarily. Yes, it's bad. No, you shouldn't actually use it. It's just an example. Lorehold Pledgemage. This card costs 3 mana, 2 of which is red-white hybrid. As you can see on screen right now, this means I can use either 2 mountains or 2 plains to cast it. In Kykar, there are 8 possible ways. I would like to draw your attention to 3 noteworthy options. 3 mountains, 3 plains, and 1 of each basic land. 1 island, 1 mountain, 1 plains. Since this is Kykar, we can also sacrifice 3 spirits, but that's basically the same thing as 3 mountains, but I figured I'd mention it just in case. This means, in Kykar, a 3-colour commander, I only need 1 of those colours to cast Lorehold Pledgemage, either exclusively red or exclusively white. Now this is Mizzix of the Ismagnus. He is an Izzet commander. This means we have 2 types of basic lands to work with, islands and mountains. He is also a 4-mana creature that has 4 ways to cast him in his 2 colours. Now, let's just examine the 2 commanders next to each other, shall we? As you can see, Kykar being 3 colours means he has access to 3 basic lands. Mizzix has access to 2. But look at that. They have access to 2 out of 3 of the same basic lands, those being islands and mountains. This means Mizzix can go in a Kykar deck, and adds 3 more ways we can cast Mizzix, giving us 6 ways in a Kykar deck. Let's go back to Lorehold Pledgemage for a moment. These are the ways we can cast it with the lands available to Kykar. Now let's remove every option that can't be done in a Mizzix deck. Look at that. There are still 2 methods available. Let's look at them in detail. 3 mountains, or 1 island and 2 mountains. I could, theoretically speaking, only use basic mountains in my Kykar deck, and I would have the ability to cast Lorehold Pledgemage. I could use only basic mountains in my Mizzix deck, and I would still have the ability, theoretically, to cast Lorehold Pledgemage. Let's examine why. As you can see, the symbols in Mizzix means these lands, islands and mountains. And you see that little red part in the mana cost of Lorehold Pledgemage? This means that much like Tumblr in the early 2010s, Lorehold Pledgemage can ignore white sources when it suits them. Now, one counter-argument I've heard, one that apparently collapses the hybrid mana argument, is that in Commander you can produce off-colour sources. I am happy to delve into that argument and disassemble it piece by bloody piece. For those who have a functioning brain, the counter-argument can be summed up thusly. My Boros deck doesn't need a way to produce black mana to cast a white-black hybrid card It already has access to white mana. But straw man I just made up, fine. I'll take up this argument and explain exactly why this doesn't weaken the hybrid mana change. For the sake of this argument, we're going to use treasure as our primary method of acquiring off-colour mana. Now, this isn't the only way, lands that produce any colour being the primary standout. Told you we'd get to them later. But once we've gotten through this segment about using treasure, it'll be pretty obvious why those don't matter. So, treasure. Any colour can produce them. Some colours are better at it than others. Colourless is better at it than blue. This means every deck has the ability to generate treasures. This means any deck can, theoretically, cast Lorehold Pledge Mage like so. 1 random land and 2 treasures, and any deck can have Lorehold Pledge Mage. At least that's how the argument goes, and therefore the hybrid mana change argument collapses. At this moment you might be thinking, wait, if I'm able to produce mana of any colour, then why does it matter that Lorehold Pledge Mage has a hybrid mana cost? Correct, that is the correct thing you should be thinking right now. I can probably stop here and move on to the next point, but you know what? I'm on a roll. Let's keep going to further drive the point home and possibly make an entirely different one as well. Let's say I'm playing a mono-green deck. I can cast Prosperous Innkeeper. When it enters, I get a treasure token. Simple, but this is Commander, so I can't just play a second one. For the same mana cost, I can cast Gala Greeters first, so let's do that. Gala Greeters into Prosperous Innkeeper to get me 2 treasures. But in case you weren't paying attention, you still need to cast them. This means you need to pay their mana costs. You see that little symbol right there? That means you need green mana to cast these spells. In your mono-green deck, you need 4 forests in order to cast these 2 spells to get your 2 treasures. Then you can take 1 forest and those 2 treasures to cast Lorehold Pledge Mage. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret, alright? Lean in nice and close so you don't miss what I'm about to say. You are still paying white or red mana for Lorehold Pledge Mage, not green. Yes, you can use your deck's colours to bypass the hybrid mana cost. But do you remember the epiphany you had a short while ago? That if you're able to produce mana of any colour, the fact you're paying for a card with a hybrid mana cost doesn't matter. In fact, there are a lot of mana value 3 non-green cards that you can cast with 1 forest and 2 treasures. Do you know exactly how many that is? I do. 5,803. Now, that count might not be entirely accurate, as it may include silver-bordered cards, but I'm reasonably sure that it's close enough to prove my point. Do you know how many hybrid mana cards there are if we include monocolour cards with hybrid abilities? 462. That number will go up when Lorwyn releases, but as of right now, the total number of hybrid mana cards is not even equal to 10% of just the non-green mana value 3 cards. Remember this slide, how I demonstrated that Mizzix can put basic mountains into its deck, and that Lorehold Pledge Mage can be cast with only mountains? So tell me exactly, why does being able to produce white mana matter to my Lorehold Pledge Mage in my Mizzix deck? The correct answer here is, it doesn't. Now, one of the other arguments against hybrid mana is Phyrexian mana. The argument being, if I can put a white-red hybrid card into my mono-red deck because I can pay exclusively red mana for the effect, I should be able to put Phyrexian mana cards into any deck I want. Let me explain to you why that's an entirely different situation. This is Dismember, one of the most important Phyrexian mana cards ever printed. For 1 mana of any type and 4 life, you can give anything -5/-5 at instant speed. Very cool, very important. Goes into any deck, right? No, because bypassing the mana cost does not change what colours of mana are required to pay for its full cost. Paying life bypasses the mana requirement. As we just went over with the treasure example, if you're bypassing the mana cost, then it doesn't matter what it actually costs. Dismember, for example, can be paid for with 1 mana of any type and for life. Sure. But that doesn't make the card non-black. If you put this in a deck without access to black mana, you have to pay for life. Now you might say, but that's no different from putting Lorehold Pledgemaster in a mono red deck. You have to pay red mana for it. You can't pay white. And while that's not wrong, the point is you can pay for Lorehold Pledgemage's full mana cost in your mono red deck. You can't pay the full mana cost of Dismember without black mana. And that's my argument about why the hybrid mana change is different. Not does this card's colour pips match this card's colour pips, but rather, this is my commander. It lets me produce these colours of mana. I can use those colours of mana to cast these spells. Sure, this might result in certain colours having access to new staples, resulting in greater deck homogenization. But you can already make a deck of nothing but staples. You can already make a deck filled with nothing but generically good cards. Hell, you can already put a card in any deck that mostly serves the function of Dismember. The Might Stone and the Weak Stone. Yeah, the mana cost is higher, yeah, it's not playable at instant speed. But that's not relevant. The point is, this card already can go in any deck. Any deck already has the ability to give any creature -5/-5. In this hypothetical world, where Phyrexian mana cards can go in any commander deck, all that's changed is decks that currently have to pay 5 mana to give a creature -5/-5 now only need to pay 1 mana. And that's not even the only colourless card that does important stuff. There's several cards that have crazy and powerful effects that every deck wants, that every deck already gets to have. All allowing hybrid mana cards to be either or does is add new cards to the card pool of various colours. You know what else does that? Every new set. You know what every new set has the potential to add to the game? New staples. You know what Wizards of the Coast can decide to do, and in fact already has done? Print colourless staples. Allowing hybrid mana cards to be either or doesn't change anything in terms of power level of commander. Now, what about the "but it's confusing" argument? You know, how colour identity, I will admit, can be a confusing thing for new players. But I'd argue this change would actually make colour identity easier to explain. Colour identity refers to the colour of manas your deck has available through its basic lands and other static mana sources, such as non-basic lands, creatures, mana rocks, etc., that produce the same colours of mana that can be produced by your basic lands. You can only add cards to your deck that you can pay the full mana cost of with those mana sources, or if the card has an ability, alternative, or additional cost that requires you to use mana from those mana sources. In other words, if you can't pay for every aspect of your card with only your deck's basic lands, it doesn't go in your deck. However, the exception to both of these rules are non-static mana sources, which allow you to choose whatever colour of mana they produce. Those can be added to your deck and used to produce any colour of mana, but don't allow you to add cards to your deck that you couldn't cast without them. This means, under this explanation, these cards can go in the following decks. Dismember goes in any deck that can use swamps. Lorehold Pledgemage goes in any deck that can use plains or mountains. The One Ring goes in any deck that can use any basic land. Reaper King goes in any deck that can use any basic land. Alesha, who smiles at death, goes in any deck that uses both mountains and plains or mountains and swamps. Ulalek, Fused Atrocity, goes in any deck that can use wastes. Which is all of them. This is a good and fun change. It's not going to dilute colour identity, it's going to open up avenues of deck building that were never possible before. For example, you could build a Kykar deck using only black or green hybrid mana cards, and you could cast every single one of those cards using only the basic lands of the deck, those being plains, mountains, or islands. In fact, I already have. Is it a good deck? Probably not, no. A lot of cards are very gimmicky that I threw in purely to make up the numbers. But the fact that I could make this deck under this change, that's rad as hell. In conclusion, the hybrid mana change isn't as big of a change as you think it is. Most hybrid cards aren't even that good. Yes, Wizards of the Coast could print extremely powerful hybrid mana cards that can go in more decks than monocolor cards. But you know what else they could print? Colorless cards that can go into any deck with extremely powerful abilities. Sure is a good thing they've never done that before.